Hello, everybody. Happy Saturday. I hope you guys are all enjoying your day. Just a few reminders. After this workshop, we'll have our weekly Onshape Q&A workshop via Zoom with more breakout rooms and more high school students from the US to help. I will send out a link at the end of the workshop. Next week, we will divert our topics and speak about reusable energy with a car with hydrogen fuel cells and more. Just another reminder, if you have not already, please create a Coderina workshop, a Coderina learning portal. Oh, sorry, everything just disconnected from me. Sorry. So I don't know if you guys heard me on the last part. Oh, okay. So and check your Coderina learning portal at least once or twice a week. Information from today's workshop will be posted on that website. Towards the end of the workshop, I'll release a tutorial link on how to create a learning portal account again. Sorry. Sorry. So this week we have a very special group from UC Berkeley, Anonymus. They are working on creating a new and original social media platform similar to Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook. So it is my privilege to introduce you to Stephanie from Anonymus.
Thanks for the intro. Hi, everyone. We hope you're all doing well today. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Coderina, for inviting us to speak today. We have a lot in store for you all, and we're really excited to share what we've been developing. As Ken said, we're a group of college students who have been working on a new innovation called Anonymus, which is a mobile application catered towards college organizations. So we'll go in more detail soon, but first let's meet the team, starting with Angelica.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angelica, and I am a rising senior at UC Berkeley, majoring in electrical engineering and computer science. I am an iOS developer and designer here at Anonymous, and I'm just really excited to be part of the team. iOS development is always something I've really wanted to get into for a while because of how accessible it is to everybody and also how much ownership you can have over the product. So we're all really excited to be able to dabble in both the engineering side and the UI UX side of this app.
Hi everyone, I'm Ishan. I am a rising sophomore at UC Berkeley, and I'm a computer science major, and I'm a developer for this app. And one thing that drew me into development in general, especially app development, is that knowing that you're actually going to be building a final product which could impact thousands, if not millions of people. And so I'm glad you guys are here today and hope you guys enjoy.
Hi, I'm Chi, and I'm an incoming junior studying computer science at UC Berkeley as well. And I always been interested in the intersection between technology and their day-to-day life. So it's really cool to be able to develop an app that aims to connect people and to make a social impact on someone's life.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie, as I said, and I'm the UX UI designer for Anonymous. I'm currently an incoming fourth year studying cognitive science and economics. My interest in exploring more of UX UI truly began with the start of this project. I'm really passionate about creating better experiences for humans and love the idea of creating valuable products that are driven by social impact.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is William. I am a rising senior studying computer science at UC Berkeley. I joined this Anonymous project because it is one of the greatest opportunities to make an impact in the technological field. iOS development is something that's for everyone. I started in robotics and self-driving cars. I do that still as a career path, but iOS development is truly an open field that is available for everyone. And this provides a really great learning opportunity, a great outlet for everything that we've learned, or everything that you learn in school, everything you learn in workshops. The code that we write before often is reused, or we have to relearn again when we make iOS applications. So it's a great mind exercise. It's a great brain exercise for me to do the project, and I hope you enjoyed the app as well.
Thanks, Will. So great. So to start off, we're going to give you an outline of what we'll be discussing today. First, we'll be giving an overview on what Anonymous is about. Then we'll walk you through the human-centered design process. And next, we'll demonstrate how we use that process in our research and design. From there, we'll cover more basics. We'll cover some basics in iOS development, followed by a product demonstration of our core feature. And we'll be answering any questions you may have at the Q&A, and we'll do our best to answer questions you have along the way. Okay, so what is Anonymous? Anonymous is an evolving mobile application that aims to help students in campus organizations meet each other more confidently through initial anonymous conversations. We'll explain soon why anonymity is important in our product and how it helps accomplish our goal of better connecting students within their campus organizations. This product idea originated at our very own campus, where the hustle and bustle of meeting new people in organizations could sometimes feel limited or misleading. Every product idea sort of goes through some kind of design process, which is why we'll briefly go over what that process consists of. So first, what is human-centered design? It's simply designing solutions for human needs. Before I discuss what the process looks like, I want to break down the difference between user experience, or UX, and user interface, or UI. If you look at the phone on top, you can see that on the left, there's a blueprint of how the application functions, while on the right, you can see how the app visually looks to the user. The left explores functionality and the right explores visual design. And another popular analogy is shown with the ketchup bottles here. You can see that on the left, it makes more sense and it's easier for you to squeeze ketchup onto your fries or whatever. And this is easier than what you see on the right, since it's already face down. And this is what we consider good UX. On the right, however, most would say that this is probably more visually appealing, and this describes UI. So it may not be the most functional, but it looks good. But in design, we need both, not just one or the other. So next, if you were to Google design process, you might find a lot of different methods and strategies for designing a mobile application. In our research, we generally follow this method. So generally, we start from the left, where we define a problem, conduct research, ideate, which is a fancy word for brainstorming, create low-fidelity sketches, mid-fidelity wireframes, conduct user tests, design high-fidelity wireframes, and then prototype. Although this order generally holds, sometimes you may need to go back a few steps to either redefine your problem, take a closer look at your insights, or often redesign your user experience in the mid-fidelity stage. Diving a little deeper, defining a problem usually starts with a how might we question. For example, how might we reimagine the experience of recycling more efficiently? Or how might we do something to improve financial literacy in our schools? It's also important to keep in mind that your question may evolve and you may have to redefine it during your design process. The research part involves asking a potential audience questions that help you discover their pain points, or in other words, needs. And this is one of the most crucial parts of the design, because without proper research, you may not be solving for a problem that actually exists. This is also important because it's when you can start to empathize with those you are trying to learn from. And empathy is really important when it comes to solving human needs. Next, in ideation, or brainstorming, you jot down as many creative ideas and solutions you may have before you converge into an idea or product that is valuable, feasible, and usable. And moving from there, you can create low-fidelity mockups of your idea or product. And this usually looks like drawings or sketches that lay out a certain blueprint of your idea. You can then iterate mid-fidelity wireframes to test out the functionality or user experience of your product. And user testing involves returning to your original user group, so those that you interviewed in your research, and testing your ideas for feedback. You should always user test before you develop the high-fidelity version of your product, which is basically the final look of your product that implements visual design. So that's the pretty UI stuff. And finally, prototyping is the idea of bringing your wireframes to life or building a representation of one or more of the ideas to show others. It's all about like interactive design, and we'll demonstrate what that looks like later. So now I'll demonstrate how we use this process in our research and design. When we first defined the problem, it started off broadly with how might we feel good about meeting new people. And then it evolved more specifically into how might we help members in an organization get to know each other better by decreasing their fears and assumptions. We wanted to focus on campus organizations because this was really where there were opportunities for improvement. So we went out and did some research to collect insights from our audience. We conducted a social media survey, observed new interactions, had one-on-one interviews, surveyed students on campus, and interviewed a group of students. We learned later on that we did not need this much research since the patterns were very clear amongst the first few people we interviewed. Thus, you only need just enough research. After user research, we collected our insights and identified pain points. In other words, again, your needs, the human needs. And through our social media surveys, we learned that 56% of participants wait for others to reach out to them first, meaning they do not initiate hangouts. 85% said that their initial assumptions negatively impacted their initial interaction with other people. 35.8% said that these assumptions come from other people's biases. And the key takeaways here were that people are hesitant to reach out to others, which can interfere with building new friendships within the organization. And they also carry assumptions about others, which can become an issue when it negatively affects their initial interactions. Next, I'll pass it on to Angelica, who will continue with more.
So like Stephanie mentioned in the previous slide, gather user insights is incredibly valuable to better understand the audience that we are making our solution for. However, it's also really important to dive deeper into these user insights, and one way we could do that is through one-on-one interviews with these people. So here on the slide, we have two different quotes here from two different people with two different experiences, and we can see that although they do have different experiences, one thing that they did share in common was them expressing regret in the way assumptions kind of came in the way of their friendships in the student organizations. And based off of this, we as developers and designers could understand better their frustrations and how deeply this issue were for the people looking to make meaningful interactions within their organizations. So user insights and just like identifying pain points through our one-on-one interviews, this is just one process where we can understand our users better. And this is really, really important because in the end, we are designing a product for people. And so it is really important to understand and be able to empathize with these people. A lot of times we can get carried away with like numbers, surveys, and statistics, but it's also really important like to connect with them and understand them in this way. And ultimately, it'll also better inform us in the design process later on and how we want to create the better user experience for our users. Whenever we're designing an app, we also have to kind of define the scope of the app and who is using our solution. And one way we can do this is by highlighting a target audience in here. And a lot of designers tend to try to create personas for this. Personas are basically like fictional characters that you create based off of research. And the main goal of personas is to represent different user types which might be using your app. So personas are really important in fulfilling different goals. Through personas, we can better understand our users' needs, behaviors, and goals. We make design tasks less complex and guide the ideation process. We're also able to create good user experience for our user group. So for Anonymous case, we were able to make 3 different personas based off of our research. The first persona being the initiator. This person is kind of, they don't worry about initiating and reaching out. They don't really see the harm of it. The waiter is kind of the more cautious person. They might kind of fear the rejection when they first initiate the hangout. And so they kind of prefer to wait until someone approaches them on their first interaction. The initiator is our third persona, and it's basically what it sounds like. It's a mix of the first two personas, and this person kind of hints at people, but is ultimately not the first person to initiate the first contact. And we have to remember that we're designing a solution for a certain group of people who have a certain experience. And when there's so many people in this group, it might get overwhelming at times. And this is when personas come really useful, because it's one way to simplify this audience and to kind of like put a face to these people and be able to better empathize and understand them, so we can make a better user experience for them. So next comes the ideation process, which is basically brainstorming on more concrete ideas on how to solve the pain points the users have. On this slide, we kind of see a mind map, and you can kind of follow through with me as I start from the middle of the graph, where it's like we put the root as the main pain point that we are trying to solve here. So when we're making our mind map, we kind of started with the 3 general approaches on how we could find solutions to solve the problem with assumptions in student organizations. And our 3 branches have included the first one being having proactive conversations. This just means engaging members in conversations which kind of lead to self-awareness that initial assumptions is an issue and might get in the way. And through our user research, we did find that this was something that was incredibly effective in relationships between people. Our second branch is creating activities, which is program-based, like social gathering and events, programs like mentorship or family programs, where you can encourage interactions between people who may not know each other coming into the organization at the start. Our third branch is product, which may represent like games, apps, and chatbots. And this is eventually like what the route that Anonymous is in. And it's like a really useful way to kind of represent your ideas, because you can go from like a more general idea and branch out into more specific examples and ideas. Next slide is competitive analysis, and it's basically researching whether or not our problem that we're trying to solve already has a solution. And within this process, we've identified 3 already existing products. The first one is Anon, which is a social media app available on the App Store. Hinge is a popular dating app here in the US, and DonutBot, which is kind of a chatbot introduced by an app called Slack. And all of these were doing a great job in solutions with a similar line to helping build relationships between people. But we did find that collectively, there was not an existing solution to help the target audience that Anonymous was trying to help. And for example, Anon brought anonymity, but not initiative to meet up. Hinge brought the initiative to meet people, but it was kind of in a different context than what we wanted. It was more focused on dating and relationships rather than like friendships within an organization. And DonutBot brought that initiative in starting the first contact. However, it didn't provide the context that we wanted in Anonymous. And so through competitive analysis, just looking at these examples, we're able to better understand the strength and weaknesses of our competition and understand where our product stands in the market and if we fill a market gap, which later on can also help us in guiding business decisions. And in general, it just helps us better inform ourselves in the design process and help us make a better experience for everybody. Now that we realize that we want to make our product that is needed, we can start into making prototyping. So the primary goal of building a prototype is to kind of test your designs and product ideas before creating them. And here we see on the slide, we have our low fidelity graphs, and they're really, really rough. They can be as rough as what you want it to be, But the most important thing is that you get the idea across, and sketches are enough for that. So basically, making prototype is a really iterative process. You're going to keep designing, getting feedback from the people that you're trying to help, and redesigning it again, and just do this over and over and keep refining your ideas every time. So here is a screenshot of a design tool that we use. It's called Figma.com. We use it to create our wireframes faster, and it provides kind of the agility and ease that we need in this process because there are so many iterations to our prototyping process. So here is our mid-fidelity wireframes. In our second iterations, we create wireframes for user testing, and we're trying to get closer to the actual app as far as we go. And one thing that you'll notice here is that our wireframes are in black and white. And you might be wondering, why is it in black and white when our app is definitely not going to be black and white? And the reason why is very much intentional, because here in our mid-fidelity prototypes, we do want to focus more on the UX and the functionality before we move into UI elements. For example, UI elements like color is good, but we kind of want to proceed with caution because sometimes it can be distracting. We don't want a pretty app that is not functional to people. And so we want to really focus on this in our mid-fidelity prototypes. And so we start with our bare bones to ensure that the experience is good before we move on to our high-fidelity prototypes, which Ishan will be explaining to us today.
Thank you, Angelica. So after mid-fidelity is done, the next iterative process is high fidelity. And so what this means is now we're done with the initial planning of the app, and we're focusing more on how the app will look like for users like you. So we start by defining some basic stuff like what primary colors we can use. For example, we have a set palette of colors that we use throughout the app, as well as a set font. And so all of these determine a general brand for your application, because you don't want users to feel lost, and they should feel a sense of continuity when they're moving between the app and knowing that this is Anonymous. So one large part is, as I said, was high fidelity. And so we designed multiple screens for high fidelity. And as you can see, this is an overarching view of all that we designed. And I'll go a bit more in detail on the next slide. So as you can see here, this is one of the core layouts of our app. So one main part of the app is the homepage, which is the leftmost screen that you see. It is basically where everyone in your organization posts questions, posts things they're curious about, or just plans to meet up. And so over here, you can definitely easily switch between which organization you're in by clicking on the header up top where Delta Kappa Alpha is. And you can post new things by clicking the plus button. And so this is just a feed of who wants to do something, who's in your organization. But at the same time, it's all anonymous, so there's no sense of who you're specifically talking with. So if you see something you're interested in, you can click into it, and you actually go inside the message thread. And so going inside will yield you with the question, and then you can start talking to the person. And so once you click on it, you can actually go through and see what the person's interested in, and you can start generating a conversation. And so as we start talking to the person, we get more in touch with them. And so on the next slide, we can see what happens if we maintain contact with the person. So as we keep talking, eventually the app will realize through an algorithm that we developed how close we are. And so it will suggest to meet up with Anon by showing us you're both on a roll on the left screen. And so after that, you can click on yes, and the same notification will be sent to the other user as well. And after both people have clicked yes, this leads to you being connected with the person, and this reveals their profile picture. And now you know who you're talking with, And this leads to a full interaction going from anonymity, and then you create contact, and then now you know who they are and you can create future plans. So another large part of the app is the profile feature that we developed. So as I talked before, you have a feed and you can click onto messages. So if you click on a specific user profile picture on the left, you can actually see a more detailed profile view. And so you can see that this is Anon1, and this they have certain interests like dance, art, and they like watching Netflix. So seeing this stuff up front without actually creating an immediate connection can lead to actually having something to talk about instead of it just being an aimless conversation of you shooting in the dark and just asking random questions. So this way it's a bit more structured, and so you know their general interests, and so you can if you have something in common, you can talk about that, and that way it's more easier to make a genuine connection with someone. So you can also see certain questions, like for example, it says why Berkeley Consulting, and that's a question that's assigned by the people who make this admin for the organization. And so if you're in a club, the people who run the club can actually set certain questions that people can answer. And so this way you can actually have a set blueprint people can answer. And so you can see why they're in the club, same as you. And you can see if there are any common interests here as well. And so the fourth screen shows you the general profile view, which is the left button on the tab controller on the bottom. And so if you click on that, you'll see a general profile view with just the same stuff, why they're in the club and their interests. And you can also easily change your interests by clicking on the interests, and you can always update them as you go along. And so now we'll talk about prototyping. And so one large part about high fidelity is making an interaction diagram to say basically to show how the user will actually use your app. And so if we start playing the video, you can see how this actually works. So basically, this is an older version of the app, as you can see. But one large part is seeing if this app actually works for the user. So designing screens is one thing, but actually seeing how the user flows from one to the next and seeing how whether an interaction is redundant and if you need to make stuff simpler. So this is actually an easy way to bring your mockups and mid-fidelity to high-fidelity designs to real life before you start making the app.
Okay, now we're going to talk about how we're going to develop the iOS development. So this is all about the part where we talk about the technical aspects. So when we talk about iOS development, you can think of it as a split between the front end and the back end. So the front end is essentially like the tip of an iceberg, like you see in this picture. It's what the user can see, and it's what the user can interact with. And oftentimes this includes displaying text, or having a good user experience, or just having a overall good design that you can interact with. And this is really important because when you're a user looking for an app to use, usually the first thing that people talk about is how good or how easy the app is to use, right? Or what kind of color scheme it has. So this is where the front end comes in. And this is essentially trying to find a really good way to display the content of your application and put it out for the user's consumption. And the other part of this engineering aspect is the backend. So the backend is what the user does not see. And this part is really about all the calculation. It's about talking to other computers. If your app is like, let's say, a very smart robot that can answer questions that you speak in, well, then this backend aspect will be the part which talks to like Google or something. And this is, again, something that you can't see, but it is something that is just as important as front end. And it's all about all the computation. So it's about sorting, it's about searching, it's about calculating, all in very quick time. It's in the matter of milliseconds. And then the result comes out and it gets put out on the front end. And the similarity between these two, even though they seem so different, is that they both have to work. because after all, if one doesn't work, then the other really cannot do its job. So these two are what we call codependent, and it's important for both of these to work in order for our app as a whole to be successful. And today we're actually going to talk about Swift and Xcode. Swift is a programming language that you use to program iOS applications. There are other languages you can use to program a phone application. You can use a different language to program in Android. But we're talking about Swift. So Swift is a language that's actually very similar to the Python programming language. And you all may be familiar with Python because of a previous workshop that you attended. And it's very similar, and it follows the same programming standards. So it actually won't be that far of a next step for you to learn Swift. And of course, now all of you must be thinking, like, how can I get started? And Xcode is Xcode. This is where Xcode comes in. Xcode is where one would write the Swift code into. And the really cool thing about Swift, like running code usually is like you click a play button and then you just see the result in a command line, right? But the cool thing about Xcode is it's an integrated development environment. And that's actually long speak for what we call an IDE. And an IDE, or an integrated development environment, is a computer program that you could use to write your code, test your code, and run your code. It's all one big package for you, and you can just do what you need. Everything you need to use to build this application will all be in one computer program. That's pretty cool, right? So we will be showing a very quick sneak peek of our Swift language, our implementation of the application, and how we use Xcode in our product demo, which is coming up next.
Hey, Will, is there supposed to be audio or?
So I can create posts here, say, let's say I want to
All right, let's start that again.
in the presentation. So when you first launch the app, it will take you to the feed where you can see a list of posts that people in your organization have posted, and you won't be able to see who they are. So they will show up as anonymous. But then when you feel interested in posting yourself, you will also be anonymous. So I can create posts here, say, let's say I want to go take photos. And I'm interested in having maybe 3 people take photos with me, or 2. Okay, I can also set a time saying it will be tomorrow, let's say 9:30 a.m. I can submit the post and it will show up on the feed where other people can respond to my post in case they are interested in hanging out with me, taking photos with me, and creating connections. So I can also respond to other people's posts if I'm interested. So for example, there's this person, 8 on 5, that wants to go karaoke at 9. And I love karaoke, so let's respond to them. Hey, wanna meet at Jaguar? Jaguar is a karaoke place. And I can wait for a response. The person says he's down, he or she is down, and we can ask, wow, I want to make sure I will actually connect with them. So why don't I ask some questions like, wow, what's your go-to song?
and they love Blackpink. I just so happen to love K-pop. I love BTS. So as you can see, the algorithm tries to sense that, oh wow, maybe me and Anonymous 5 have something in common. We both like BTS, we both want to go karaoke. They start suggesting, do you want to meet up? And yeah, of course I do. Like, I love karaoke, I want to see this person. So I click on yes. I do want to meet up, Anon. So once I click on yes, I want to meet up Anon, they'll also get a prompt asking if they want to meet up with me. And since we both have said yes, the person on the other side of the screen has been revealed with their name and saying that we want to do something, and then we can suggest something to do in this box over here. We can also go to other organizations to see other posts that over in your other orgs. For example, in Delta Kappa Psi, which I have switched into, I can see if they want to get ice cream on Telegraph, or maybe they want to go to Rose Garden, and I can respond to those posts correspondingly too. Additionally, we have a little chat list feature, or on the side, you can see all the organizations you have taken part in. And just now, I respond to Anon5, who was revealed to be Chi, to go who I want to karaoke with, and it will also show the very last. It will show the very last message we sent together, and along with the little countdown timer here that shows we only have 23 hours left before this post gets deleted, because part of Anonymous is for the post to get deleted every 24 hours, so we can constantly get new ideas, new connections, and that concludes the demo portion. We will now move on to looking at some of the code that we wrote for the app. In particular, I'll be talking more about the front end side. So if you come back to look at the app, you can see that we have a tab on top and a tab on the bottom that lets us to switch between the feed and the chat list. And on top, we have a list that allows us to switch between different organizations. So in Xcode, these are called the tab bar controller and the navigation controller for the top and tab bar for the bottom. So to get both of them together, you can embed the tab bar controller and the navigation controller to get the most. So in this view controller over here, we have a navigation controller, and then we link it to a tab bar controller, so we can get both the top and the bottom. Then we can link it to the corresponding view controllers we want based on the different icons at the bottom. So this little house button here will link to the main view controller, which is the feed, and this chat icon will link to the chat list controller, which shows all the chat that we are part of. And if we go over the code in my tab bar controller, which is this main view controller over here, we can see that we have various different buttons, and we have various different buttons. We have a UI table view for our organizations that we're in this separate UI view here, which we call org drop-down view, because it drops down when we click on the organization. And in the view did load, that's the function that loads the moment that your application says, oh, we have found the view controller and we're going to start loading the screen. So we set our corresponding delegates, we set our corresponding titles to the current organization we're in. We add our blur effect for when we click on when we switch organizations, the background gets blurred. And we add gesture organizers that allow us to sense when we click out of the drop-down button, so we can go back to looking at our feed or chat list. We also have corresponding actions and methods, but when we press the organization button, so if I press down the org name, it will tell me if the drop-down is showing, and if it is, then I want to close the drop-down. If not, then I want to show the drop-down, and we have our close view function that actually does the closing. We have the animate in function, which really is trying to show this UI view, which contains our drop-down menu. Right now it's hidden, but when we click on the organization button on top, we want to actually bring the view inside. So we set our corresponding values and attributes here to make sure that it comes into frame, and we set the height as well, based on how many organizations the users are in. And then down here at the very bottom, we have our table view delegates. So when you implement table view, you have certain delegates that you should implement to tell the program how many rows are there going to be and what content should actually be displayed at those corresponding rows. So there's height for row at, which dictates the height for every single cell in the table. There is dislike row at, which is what happens when you click at the corresponding table cell. So for example, if I click on the cell Anonymous team, it should switch inside into the organization, and we will write the corresponding code that does so. We also have number of rows in section that tells us how many number of rows that we should have in the table. And we also have cell for row at, which actually tells the program what every single row should have, such as the name of the organization in this case. And we can also set the corresponding font size, and colors based on what we want to.
All right, so that was the demo for our app. I really hope that you enjoyed it. To get you started, we also have a list of resources that you can look into to develop your own app. So for UI UX design, there's some Medium articles and those several lists of websites that will help you design your own app before you develop it. And for iOS, to get started with Swift development, iOS development, and actually writing the code for your own app, we also have a list of websites on the right side of the slide that will help you get started as well. Many of them have great, excellent tutorials you can follow to build your first few apps and before you branch out on your own ideas. We will now move on to the Q&A portion.
Hey guys, so today's Q&A portion, if you guys can type in some questions into our chat, and but to get us started, I have just a few questions I can ask you guys. Very cool presentation today, by the way. So what is your development process like?
So thanks, Kenneth. So our development process is based off a traditional agile style that we work with at professional tech companies. So the way that it works is we have iterations, and iterations is usually the approach to make anything better. And iterations usually means that we're working in repeated cycles. So you would have one cycle to develop a feature, and then you'd have a second cycle to improve on that feature. So this entire idea is to help us develop a better application overall, and also work on overall a better teamwork. Because there are so many people on our team, it might not be necessarily easy to have everyone working on the app at the same time, right? Wouldn't you be upset if someone changed your code while you're writing it? So to solve this issue, we use GitHub, and GitHub is a collaborative code program. You may have heard of GitHub before, and it essentially allows us to contribute all to one single folder of files. It's called a repository, and we can just continue adding or changing files, or changing files individually instead of as a entire folder. We don't have to like set around a folder around between ourselves. This entire GitHub computer program is going to be online. It's going to be in the cloud, so we can actually collaborate and work in real time.
Awesome. Thank you. So another question is, how long did it take for you guys to make this entire app? Or how long did it take for you to get to where you are right now?
Yeah, I can probably answer that question. So we started back in February of 2020. I would say like defining the problem and doing the research, as well as creating the designs and wireframes and prototyping, that took about 3 weeks. And after that, we started to develop we started to test more of our product and then develop higher versions of it. And then we rolled into developing it through iOS. And that was about, I believe that was from March to May. And currently in the summer, we're just brushing things up and trying to improve what we already have and what we learned from the past couple of months.
I think you're muted.
Oh, thank you, Stephanie. Another question we have is, how did you guys get so good, and what's your journey in coding?
I can answer that question. So everyone starts from different levels, of course, and you could have started from no iOS skills and no programming skills, or you could know basic Python, Java. And so everyone starts from a different level, but an important part is sticking with it and actually trying to find different resources, learning how little parts of your code work, trying to create mini projects of your own, and making stuff small just to see how it runs, and then trying to make it into a bigger app. And so you don't just become an entire full stack app developer overnight. It takes time to run like little projects of trying to see how this feature in Swift works and trying to integrate it in this feature. And so it's an iterative process. And yeah, it's definitely something that you guys should definitely try.
Okay, so one question from the audience is, how do you solve privacy issues and hacks to access personal information?
To answer this question from an engineering standpoint, the way we solve privacy issues is really based on strong construction. So we had to build this app strong from the ground up. We couldn't compromise on building our app on a library which we knew which could be insecure. So we actually built a lot of our app from ground up, which is why the app may not be in the final stages or deployed to the App Store today, even though we've been working on it for a while. But truly, the quality of work that was put into this application is all in the name and for the sake of very good security and very robust practices. And of course, it takes a lot of discipline to build an application without using any libraries. And for those who are unfamiliar, a library is a set of pre-made code that you can put into your iOS application. And frankly, libraries are great when you're trying to make an application for the first time, because all the hard bits, all the very difficult parts of coding are taken away at the moment you use a library. And that way, with a library, you can make a fully functioning app in a few hours. And that's how cool libraries are. But the alternative is, if we're trying to build an application that is to be based around a secure core, a very secure framework that is safe for both the users and the people who are in the ecosystem. We want to make sure that our application is something that can be trusted and relied on. A lot of people often have questions also about the anonymous aspect. How scary would it be to talk to someone in your who you think is in your organization, but in reality, they are not who they claim to be. So this is why we have put in both engineering practices that protect the data of our users, but also very strong practices that are developed from industry grade practices that a lot of big companies use to protect the data. We, for example, use secure passcodes. We use multiple layers on top of just saying that we have a secure framework to make sure that the users feel safe where they are in our organization, in our application.
Thank you, Will. That was a really nice answer to your question. So another question, maybe this is a good question for Stephanie, is what inspired you and gave you the idea for your application?
Sure, thanks for that question. Good question. So what inspired this idea was personally, some of us, but in my own personal experience, we have joined a few organizations on campus, and sometimes through this organization, you can usually join an organization at the start of a semester, of a fall semester, or the start of a spring semester. And usually you would think a semester is a very long time, but sometimes with so much going on, you get really busy and it's hard to really interact with people without making an effort to do that. And so when I joined an organization last semester, I wanted to get to know as many people as I could, and there were definitely over 30 people in the organization, maybe even close to 60. And so with that, it was hard to really reach out to everybody and try to get to know them. And despite like social chairs, so people in the organization who lead activities, despite their efforts of trying to bring people together, it was very difficult. And I think it was hard to really reach out to others without really knowing much about them, even though you are in the same club. At some point, the questions of why did you join this club should have get reused a lot. And so I think what inspired us was to sort of, through this personal conflict of trying to get to know other people in your organization better, it inspired me to really think like, well, how can I get to know someone better in my organization, like while school is going on still? And sometimes, you know, events that social chairs plan are really great, but they can be very limited in how much interaction you have with someone. So we were trying to think like, what can we do to sort of have a space for people to converse a lot more and get to know each other more, without also letting like initial assumptions of each other get in the way. Because at least in a college campus, it's like you meet a lot of people, and sometimes you hear things from other people that might not be true, and that can affect how you interact with them. And you don't want that to persist in your club organization, especially if you are an organization that's trying to work together. So that's sort of where this all started on a campus.
Thank you so much. And maybe one final question we have is, what are your future plans?
Yeah, so I can cover that too. So our future plans right now are, it is June. So in July, we are working on developing more of that feature that you saw. Ishan had presented. It was the second part where you can sort of put in your interests for others to see, but they're not very specific. They're more general interests. So we're working on implementing that. And then later on in August and moving forward, we want to be able to get some more support from our community. We want to be able to user test this with an actual club on campus, or a few or two, to see how it would work in a real environment and to get some feedback on how we can improve. And then moving forward with that, we'd want to be able to eventually launch this app after we get some more support, some monetary support as well. And yeah, we're just looking forward to getting more people involved in our app and spreading this across campus to see how it will work.
All right, thank you so much. And if you can move to the next slide. These are all our questions. If you have further questions, you can always contact them through, I think, LinkedIn, right?
Yes.
Yes, through LinkedIn. And you can always, if you have any questions, post it onto the learn.coderina forum website, and I'll share the questions with them. So can you go on the next slide? Or do you have anything to say for this?
Oh, I just want to say thank you, Coderina, for also working with us to be able to give us this opportunity to share what Anonymous is about. And thank you all for watching. We hope you learned a little more today about design and engineering.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So we'll come back to this really quickly. Can you go on to the next one? So next week, we'll talk about renewable energy. So solar panels, hydrogen fuel cell cars. And this is hosted by FRC Team 3473, Team Sprocket from Darrenburg, California. And yeah, and then coming soon, we have Code Orange from Irvine, California, talking about 3D printing. So it's giving you an intro to that in material science analysis. And then we're also going to start a new Sunday session. So Sunday around, I think, 4 p.m. Nigeria or something like that. We'll talk about a new FL/EV3 Lego simulator. So since the season's gonna probably be virtual, we're gonna give you an insight on simulators that you can use. And this is by an FTC team, the Second Rebellion from Malton, California. And in the future, we are still planning for more workshops. For example, like introduction to FTC programming, statics, and thermodynamics. So yeah, thank you so much. And we're gonna start the Zoom the CAD session soon. So I think the high school students are getting ready for that. They've been texting my phone and getting like, oh, we're ready soon. Yeah. So if you guys wanna join, the meeting ID is there and the link is there, and I'll have them post the link again. So thank you for coming today. Okay, I think we can end the live stream. Don't leave yet.